Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.
Welcome to the Paranormal News Insider for the week of October 4th, 2022. That's right, 10-4, good buddy. And this is officially episode number 530. And this is your host, as always, Dr. Brian D. Parsons. And we are live on the Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com. And welcome to everybody who is listening live in the chat room. And if you're not live in the chat room, well, hopefully you're not dead in the chat room. That would be really, really bad for ratings. But if you're looking for the links to listen live, you're sitting at home, maybe you're driving down the freeway, well, pull over if you're doing that before you look at your phone. And you can go to ParanormalKing.com. You can also go to ParaNewsInsider.com, the home of the Paranormal News Insider. And you can look on the right-hand side there. Pretty much every page, I've got a link to the listen live page in the chat room for this. But of course, if you're listening to this show, you're probably already there, or you're listening to this as a podcast. So maybe I'm telling you for the future, for future reference. But either way, you don't have to. I'd just like to share some photographs and add a different dimension to just your run-of-the-mill podcast. And the last thing I want to be is a run-of-the-mill podcast. I'm pretty much one of the few. I don't know if there's any left. There used to be a few people, and you've made it when other people are copying what you do. And there was a few shows that were doing paranormal news there for a while. Whether or not I don't know. Maybe they'd never heard of me, but that's okay. I just take it as that. But I don't just read headlines and then debate about a story and go back and forth. I bring you the story, and we talk about it, and I'll break it down. I'll do research. I'll look into this. If I have to email or call somebody that's involved in the story, I'll do it. Of course, I've been doing this show since 2008. So let me take my shoe off here. That's 14 years. It's quite a long time that I've been disseminating the news of the paranormal. And of course, we talk about everything here on the show, not just ghosts. Which is where I started out almost 25, well, actually more than 25 years now, as a ghost investigator, ghost researcher back in the days when going into cemeteries was okay. It was fine. Don't do that nowadays. Did a lot of paranormal research back then, beyond just ghosts, but also psi phenomena, and understanding how we connect with ghosts and what are the popular hypotheses of all of that stuff. And through the times, I've gotten involved in cryptozoology and ufology and just everything. And it's not about me. It's not about my paranormal group that I had for 15 years. I've worked with a lot of other groups, such as MUFON, the Cleveland Ufology Project, which is one of the oldest UFO organizations, been around since the 1950s here in the Cleveland, Ohio area. Little shout out to my friends down there in Cleveland. Also, Paranexus Anomalous Research Association, where I learned a lot from a lot of other people on how to look at photographs, listen to video, audio, and or look at video, I suppose. Well, you can listen to video as well, but disseminating all that information, how to dig in, how to find different things. A lot of things that come in handy for this show when you're looking at this paranormal news. And obviously, I have a stake in this. It's the Paranormal News Insider. It's not the Skeptical News Insider. I may come across skeptical. This rant is due to a couple of emails I received in the last couple of weeks. But unfortunately, you have to be skeptical because it's very, very easy to be a believer and believe every story that comes out. Yes, that's the dog man. Yes, that's The Loch Ness Monster. Yes, that's genuinely a UFO from Neptune or wherever they're from. Wherever they're from. Mars still? I don't know. Is that too outdated? Um, but it's also easy to be completely dismissive. A hardcore skeptic just says, they don't exist, so therefore that story is wrong. It has to be explainable. Those are two easy ends. But what I call each one of those extremes is the wavering ends of denial. And so, therefore, I paddle right down the middle. And again, I let the story speak for itself. I let the data speak for itself. I let the information gathered from these stories do the talking. It's not me. I'm just disseminating. I'm just giving you the information based on what's here. And the data, the information that takes us where we need to go. And wherever that may be, if it's saying that that story is not real or this animal is not what people think, well, that's just the way it is. It's not up to me to decide. It's the information gathered from these stories. So don't think I'm just dismissing or I'm a skeptic in hiding. I'll admit I'm skeptical, and the longer you're in the paranormal field, the more skeptical you'll become. That's just natural. It's normal. It's a progression. For a lot of people, jump in to the paranormal. Usually in the ghost field, they believe everything. Everything is a ghost. Oh, look at that! It's an orb. It's a ghost. It's Aunt Martha or whoever. And over time, you do become a little skeptical because of the activities of other people or what you see on television. And then you yourself become skeptical of what you're doing. It's just natural, normal, hopefully. I mean, if you see people like, oh, I don't know, Zach Bagans, for example, after 15 years on TV doing the same tired routine, jumping and screaming and believing, obviously, he's doing that for money. He gets paid to do that. It's television. It's entertainment. He has a museum. The museum isn't free. You got to pay to get in. And no one's got to pay to get in if everything he has in there is not really haunted. It's not how it works. So he has an investment. And once that investment, if you have a personal investment where a lot of groups have a lot of money for tools and technology, of course, then they want to believe. But after a while, it kind of wears out when you realize that things aren't the way they are. So it's a natural progression. That's where I'm at. But I'm not overly skeptical because I've seen things that I can't explain. And we've had stories on here that really defied explanation. And that's what we hope for. We hope for the stories really that are life-changing. Stories are going to validate that maybe the Loch Ness Monster is real. And that maybe there is alien life amongst us. We hope that we can talk about that, but it's been going on 15 years, and so we haven't yet got there. So hopefully together we can get there. Yeah, cryptozoology. I kind of learned cryptozoology on my own. I did work with a group out of British Columbia. Gosh, trying to remember who they were called. I didn't want to get involved with a Bigfoot group or Sasquatch group because there's more to cryptozoology than just Bigfoot. But here in Ohio, it seems like all the groups investigate Bigfoot. That's it. They don't care about anything else. Sasquatch Research Initiative was the group that I got involved with, and actually was helped along by Pennsylvania researcher Eric Altman, good friend of mine, colleague, call him. Well, both, I guess. Little did I know at the time. And then I met him and talked to him, and he's like, yeah, dude, I laid that foundation for that team. So learned a lot from them. So I guess I learned a lot from Eric Altman and a lot from other people. So it's not about me. I've learned a lot from other people, other groups. And now I'm trying to be that teacher, I guess, and pass along my knowledge and dissemination techniques little by little, story by story, week by week. And of course, 530th episode, I believe. Let me peek over here real quick. I think last week I was thinking about, I was looking at these numbers. Pretty sure tonight is, yes, it is. Tonight is actually the 300th 1 hour live show. So I've done 23 monthly segments back on the, when it first started out, way back, way back in 2008. Some of you weren't even born yet. I hope I have young fans, impressionable youth. September 2008 started on the Grand Dark Conspiracy. This was a pre-recorded, like 5 minute segment. And then after 23 months, we went to a weekly format for 207 weeks. Well, at least I did 207 shows. It's probably a lot longer than that. We missed a few here and there, but the pre-recorded days, it was fun. But nothing beats live radio. I just love it. I do miss the pre-recorded stuff because you could do sound effects and had music and all that. But in this day and age, YouTube and Facebook would never allow me to do that. So on we go. And I do enjoy the live thing. And I hope you enjoy the live thing and the podcast thing, the recorded thing, I guess. So live radio and podcast all in one. Cute little green package here known as the Paranormal News Insider. So you didn't come here for all that. You came here for the news, of course. And I'm here to give it to you. And we're going all over the place tonight. We're going to be, it looks like a lot of news from England. I don't know what it is. So it's early for you guys out there. No, it's late for you guys. I'm sorry, wrong way. I'm looking the wrong direction. Let me look east. Oh, I see you guys. It's dark over there. Really dark. It's like midnight. Staying up late. That's great. So we're going to start as we always start in encrypted news, and starting off with a familiar tone, a familiar story that we've talked about off and on this year, the last few years. It's become popular of a paranormal story, not just here on this show, but throughout paranormal news. And that's about alligators and crocodiles being found well outside their normal range in the Northeast or Midwest, the United States. We had one a few weeks ago. I believe it was Wisconsin. There was a sighting. No further sightings were reported. We've talked about them years past in Chicago. There's usually a lot of them in Lake Michigan. For some reason, people let them go in either the rivers or the lake itself. And there's been a few sightings here in Ohio. There was a huge crocodile sighting a few years back in a lake where children were playing, or I'm sorry, a little creek where children were playing. Nobody was injured. And of course, these are generally, well, they're obviously all pets that people bought or smuggled. Smuggled is a cool word. But they're probably just bought in pet shops, illegal or legal, and released into the wild, which is, like I said, it's a death sentence for these animals, and it could be potentially dangerous if these animals get big. But this particular story is not from the Midwest, the United States. And every now and again, we do hear one about somewhere else in the world where a sighting has occurred, where these creatures should not exist. And this week, I mentioned it. Yes, we're going to England. And this one is out of northern England, where Sarah Craven claims to have filmed not one, but two crocodiles swimming in the North Sea. That might be hard to believe since, gosh, it's October 4th. It's cold up there in the North Sea. I've never been in it, but I can tell you just by looking at pictures, I could tell it's cold. Well, that's not true. I could just tell you because of the location. That far north, that's got to be some cold, cold water. And crocodiles don't really do too well in cold water. Now, they can swim in salt water. Some of them, not all of them. Alligators, they don't do so well in salt water. Not too long. They don't do very well in cold water either. So, what did Sarah Craven see? She actually has a video of her purported sighting. And the video shows two strange objects in the water at the Blue Dolphin Caravan Park. And I'll admit, I watched it, and I try to watch it without my skepticals on. And I just watched it. I was like, yeah, okay, I can see how that might look like crocodiles. Okay, what are these creatures swimming through the water? And then, of course, I watched it a few more times, and we'll get into that at the end of the story. So Craven was camping in the area at the Blue Dolphin Caravan Park with her family, and she stated of the encounter, she said, quote, "We took the boys up for a walk on the cliff top when we saw some dolphins jumping in the background. Suddenly, my son shouted, 'Crocodiles.' We all looked down, and there in front of me were what I thought were two large crocodiles." Unquote. Sarah claimed that she could, quote, "see the crocodiles' front and back legs swimming with their long, pointy tails swishing behind them, and they had skin that looked bumpy like crocodile or alligator skin," unquote. And I don't know. Like I said, I watched the video, and admittedly, at first, it did look like something or two things swimming through the water. And I don't know. So if you watch the video, it's well, of course, you can't really tell. Looking at this picture, you can't really tell if it's alligators or crocodiles. And I guess you tell the difference. It's pretty easy when you look at crocodiles or alligators. You could tell the difference. Yes, of course, you could tell the difference if one's going to see you after a while or a little later. But crocodiles have the skinnier snout, longer, skinnier snout. Alligators are more rounded on the head. It's the easiest way to tell. Of course, I don't recommend getting that close. So what did she see? And of course, anytime you see anything strange or out of the ordinary, the first thing you should always do is rush it to social media immediately, because that's where all the experts are, and they'll help you disseminate what you saw. They'll tell you exactly what you saw. But it helps too. It also gets the stories out into the media. People are fighting for the rights to get some money for these stories. And the internet experts chimed in right away, and many supported the idea of these being crocodiles. I mean, again, you watch it, it does look like creatures are swimming through the water, or some other strange animal. However, admittedly, I took 3 times to watch this, and I said, wait a minute. I don't think those things are moving. I think it's just the water. I think it's like an illusion of what I'm looking at here. Because, we're told what we're seeing, right? It's kind of like watching, let me go back and beat them up again, Ghost Adventures. And you see a little quote on the screen, and it says, this EVP clip says, "Get out of the room, Jamie. I'm putting my underwear on." And you're like, whoa. And the clip comes on, and it's like, and you're like, whoa, that said, "Get out of here, Jamie. I'm putting my underwear on." That's exactly what it said. Whoa. But yeah, you're prompted. You're told what is being said. And if you were to not look at that, and then they play the sound, you're like, that sounds like somebody spitting their gum out in the trash or shuffling their feet across the carpet. It doesn't sound like anybody saying any words. Sounds like somebody's got their digital recorder in their hand, and they're setting it down, or they're moving it, or they got their hand in their pocket or something. Sure, it doesn't sound like a voice, but you're prompted. And that's exactly what happened here in this case with Sarah Craven. Her son shouted out, "Look, Mom, crocodile." And she started filming it in a panic because, wow, these things are swimming through the water. And, when you got waves coming in, you got water coming in on the beach, water going out, sometimes it could give the appearance of things moving. And if you're not familiar with the area, you don't know that there's rocks there. Maybe they were there a few hours before that, and now the tide's going out, so they didn't see these rocks. They weren't visible because maybe they were under the water at the time. I'm just speculating at this point, but maybe she thought it was just water, and then all of a sudden, hey, that wasn't there before. Perhaps. Perhaps. But experts have viewed the footage and also still images of the video images and concluded that Sarah saw was actually semi-submerged rocks with waves creating the illusion of movement. And that's pretty much what you're seeing. I mean, it's scary to think that you're seeing alligators, but I mean, how long did you watch this and not realize that they weren't moving along? Well, of course, when you got kids, you're not going to stand there for 5 or 10 minutes and watch these things. So I kind of get it, but not a water monster in this case. But another monster, of course, our favorite one here on the show, everybody loves it so much. The Loch Ness Monster. Well, no sightings. No sightings. It's been a pretty quiet year for the Loch Ness Monster so far here in 2022. But exciting news out of the United Kingdom. They might have found something a little bit more interesting, or at least some interesting competition, in my thoughts. And this is an interesting story because of the data gathered, or you could say evidence gathered in this case. Jamie Houghton, a 50-year-old insurance broker from Derbyshire, England, was on holiday back in June of this year. Yeah, holiday. I guess they don't get vacations in the UK. They just get holidays. I like my vacations. Well, of course, now we just call it PTO here. When he not only spotted, but took several pictures of an unknown creature swimming in a loch, but not Loch Ness, a different loch. The man was bird watching when he noticed some commotion on the surface of Long Loch, which is it's in Scotland. It's west of Glasgow, so it's well southwest of Loch Ness. What's really interesting about this story, this is why it jumped out to me, is the fact that he was able to reel off a pair of pretty decent photographs. Now, he says that the images that he provided were cropped and zoomed, but they don't look that bad. They don't look blurry, out of focus. What you typically see from Loch Ness Monster sightings, which, I've always said, I think they're blurry on purpose. I think they're out of focus on purpose, just like Bigfoot pictures. Bigfoot, a lot of people think it's an interdimensional creature because it's always blurry in the picture. And the fact that footsteps seem to disappear. Of course, if you've ever followed any animal through the woods, sometimes, you hit that brick wall where those footprints just disappear because landscape changes. But anyway, we'll go down that path. But I just find it interesting that, we have all these Loch Ness Monster sightings and hardly any of them have decent images. And of course, everybody goes there on holiday or vacation or PTO, whatever you got, whatever you can do, man, go take it. Enjoy your time off. Get that work-life balance going, baby. Spend some time with yourself, or you're with your family, whatever. Get out there, smell the fresh air, that Scottish countryside. Have some haggis while you're up there, too. I highly recommend it. Don't ask what it is, just eat it. It's fantastic. But it got some pretty good pictures. Now, of course, he was bird watching, but everybody that goes to Loch Ness is sightseeing, right? Everyone's a tourist. Nobody lives there. Everybody's a tourist around Loch Ness. I don't think anybody actually lives in that whole entire part of Scotland. Well, of course, maybe 20 people do. Of course, all the hotel owners probably are. Of this encounter, Jamie says, I hate when I do that. He says, quote, "It was difficult to say what size it was, as it was some distance away, sort of close to the middle of the loch. The pictures I took are zoomed in and cropped heavily on just a basic camera. When it first came up, I'd say it was much longer and slender than any seal I've seen. I'm convinced it wasn't a seal, as it just seemed too slender and too long. It came up again, but not as high the second time, and this was the time that I had my camera ready. I'd say it was visible for no more than a minute in total. Then it submerged, not to be seen again. We hung around for an hour or so, hoping for further sightings, but it never surfaced again," unquote. So I do have a few photographs I'll share in the chat room. So again, if you get the chance, if you have the ability, I highly recommend being in the chat room. It adds that extra dimension to your experience here on the show. It's not just my voice. It's not just me comforting you and talking to you softly. It's also pictures that I like to share. And there's one image there. So it's hard to tell what that is, but at least it's not blurry. Something splashing in the water. It's obviously some fish-like creature, but you don't know. Doesn't look like a plesiosaur, I don't think. Here's the second picture. But the first one looks like just like a just something splashing. Could be a fish. I've seen that a million times. Second one looks like maybe a fish or maybe a seal or something playing with, looks like seaweed. And of course, there is a cropped image of that as well. It's been making the rounds on all the media that I'll post in there, so you can get a little closer look at it. And it doesn't really provide much more detail, but when you look at the skin of that creature, it definitely looks fish-like, or to me, a very seal-like. And of course, he says, well, it's too this and it's too can't be a seal. And anytime I ever hear anybody say, as a witness to, especially a cryptid, when they say it can't be something, usually the experts are like, well, actually, it could be, and it's more than likely that thing that you said it couldn't be. We've seen that a lot. And if I had to make a guess, I would say seal, based on that skin color. Now, that could be a fish, but I don't know if that's fish behavior to do what he described. Not that fish have that easily kind of repeatable behavior, but sometimes, usually a fish jumps out of the water and that's it. He's done, or she's done. It's done. They're done. Whatever. At the time, a local told Jamie that he thought it was a porpoise in the water, maybe playing with food or coming up for air, but it doesn't look like that to me. It doesn't look smooth like a porpoise would be. It doesn't have the coloration of porpoise in that area. Internet experts, of course, we always turn to them in times of need, times of questions, and time of pictures that we can't really identify, because they just have this amazing software, 3D software. Apparently, they can peek in, they can go back in time and see what we can't see. I guess I don't know, speculating. They've chimed in stating that it could be, again, also a porpoise, a seal, a turtle, or a fish. I'm sure some people thought it might be the Loch Ness Monster, which is kind of the going joke, and that's what gained this story some traction, is that people are joking that not only is Jamie on holiday, but maybe the Loch Ness Monster is on holiday. Like, I've never heard that one before. Yeah, we hear that like 20 times a year, that the Loch Ness Monster has left Loch Ness. It is now on holiday somewhere else in one of the other 90 bodies of water bigger than a bathtub. Well, it'd probably be more than 90 up there in England, or Scotland for that matter. But yes, That's a pretty decent list of potential creatures. And again, to me, the coloration, the size, the shape looks like a harbor seal to me. It could be a skinnier one, but that time of the year in September, which is when he saw, is the breeding time. This could be a seal, could be a, what do they call it, a pup. They're pups, not puppies, pups. That would explain why it's a little skinnier, a little longer, a little thinner. I've seen plenty of seals in trips to Maine and Washington and Alaska. Um, yeah, it looks like a seal to me. And I've seen some skinny seals chasing fish, octopus, different things through shallower waters. And they like to play with their food. So that seems to me like the behavior of a seal. But, looking at that, one of the biggest arguments about Loch Ness and it being a plesiosaur is the fact that Loch Ness gets pretty narrow, and there's actually, I'm pretty sure there's a dam there, and then it goes to the Ness River, which then empties out into the ocean. So it gets pretty thin and shallow, not like a creek or anything like that. But it's a small river. It's not very big compared to the long, thin Loch Ness. It looks like a giant. It looks like the Mississippi River with taller banks whenever I see it. But it's just really a long, thin lake, as is Loch Long. But the difference is that Loch Long empties right into the open ocean, and it's salt water. It's not fresh water. So, of course, you're going to see creatures like porpoise and harbor seals in the area, especially in September, breeding season. They're all in the air, especially on that coast. So the west coast of England is where you're going to see Scotland, UK. You're going to see these seals. They're very, very, I don't say rare, but you're not really going to see too many of them on the eastern portion of the UK. And probably not many of them in Loch Ness because it's fresh water, and fresh water doesn't taste so good, and they don't eat the fish usually that are there. So seals really have no need to be in Loch Ness. But this, to me, I mean, hats off that he took some really good pictures for the time that he had. And of course, he says that it was higher out of the water at the time, but it's pretty difficult to get a picture of a moment like that, and that's why I hear skeptical people talk about, well, the thing was right there. Why didn't you? Everyone's got a camera with them. Why didn't you take a picture of it? That's one of the biggest arguments. But I laugh. I remember I've had more than one instance where an animal ran out in front of me, be it a deer or even a rabbit. I had a snake once that I froze and never thought, my phone was right there. I could just take a picture of it. And sometimes you just get caught up in the moment, but hats off to him for getting a couple of really good snaps of this lake monster. And speaking of lake monsters, I'm kind of a little jealous about all this. We always talk about Loch Ness and now Loch Long, about sea creatures over there, the United Kingdom. We got a few over here in North America, and be a few famous ones here in the United States. A couple states over from me, I suppose, here. And cryptozoologist Katie Elizabeth recently shared some interesting evidence she has gathered in search of the water monster of Lake Champlain. I think that should be his name, or her name, or its name, their name, whatever. But it's known as Champ. It's a pretty good short name, and you could put it on a T-shirt and a frisbee or a baseball team, which they do have. I think he's the mascot of the team, Champ. Lake Champlain. Well, I was going to say it's in Vermont, but it is in Vermont. But I guess New York State tries to take credit for this. There's kind of like a battle between Vermont and New York, but it also goes up into Quebec. So thank you, Canada, for you guys got your own stuff up there. Got your own monsters over in British Columbia generally, but we claim it. Champ is ours. He doesn't cross the border. Doesn't have a passport or a visa. Champ, in case you haven't heard of Champ, look it up. It's had a following since the 1800s, and even P.T. Barnum, I think more than once, I think twice, put up a reward for anyone who could find and bring him the monster, dead or alive, warm or cold. In 1977, Sandra Mancy took the very famous photograph while on vacation of what appeared to be a long neck and head. Most people see it as a dinosaur, the old Brontosaurus. The head kind of curved away from the viewer, and a body sticking up out of the water. I do have a picture that I'll share with you in case to jog your memory. And as soon as you see it, you go, "Oh yeah, yeah, I remember that." And this is the wide angle view. I'll give you the good picture, not the cropped picture. This is my favorite. I like that one. It's pretty good. Now, a lot of experts say that this was just a submerged log. Now, I've seen a lot of logs in water. I've kayaked, and gosh, I couldn't even like 30 different reservoirs and rivers here in Ohio and Pennsylvania. I think that's it. Yeah, just those two. I guess, yeah, maybe just those two states. Anyway, but a lot of bodies of water. I've seen a lot of submerged logs. They don't generally stick that high up, that shape of water or shape of object, but sometimes they stick up, and you're not sure what you see until you get up closer to them. So we'll never know. We don't know. That could easily be a submerged log just moving with the current. Maybe it tipped over and fell in the water. She couldn't see it anymore. It's possible. Maybe just hopeful thinking. Who knows? But it sure is an interesting photograph, and it's one of those that's so ambiguous. You could debate it all day, and no one's ever going to win. But a big following for this creature, even before that. But in '77, that Sandra Mancy photograph while on vacation of this creature has really kept this as a creature that people are still searching for. And there's been a lot of purported sightings, basically of a plesiosaur type creature with a long neck, the long fins and stuff. And there's been plenty of TV shows filmed out there on Lake Champlain. They purportedly heard, I remember a few years ago, underwater sounds that they thought were very similar to beluga whales. But I don't think anything ever came from that. But now Katie Elizabeth has come forward with some new data, some new findings in the form of sonar readings. And we talk about that every now and again, about the Loch Ness Monster, these cruise ships, I guess, lack of a better term, because some of them hold quite a few people. These tourist boats, with maybe a few dozen people down to maybe 10 or 15 people. They have these live sonars, and people will occasionally take a picture and get, their $20 from the Star or some other online newspaper from the UK and make a little cash, but also get these stories out and show us potential evidence of the Loch Ness Monster. But now we have some sonar readings from aboard Katie Elizabeth's boat, the Kelpie 2, which is outfitted with some good sonar equipment. And her search, which is known as Champ Search, it's her business name, looking for evidence of Champ. The sonar readings indicate an object moving at about 42 and a half feet underwater. That's pretty deep. I didn't realize Champlain was that deep. But yeah, it's carved from the glaciers. So really and truly, Champlain isn't. It's probably less than the Great Lakes, which are about 100,000 years old. And it's probably made about the same time, I would suppose. This object is not only 42.5 feet deep, it's also estimated to be about 20 feet long. And if you go to her YouTube channel, the Champ Search YouTube channel, you can watch a video, and she kind of explains her finding, and she kind of shares um, how she gathered it and how she feels that it is Champ. So check that out. It's always interesting to see new evidence and new information gathered by researchers on these kind of creatures. And then who knows? Maybe these sightings will add up to something very important. And speaking of sightings adding up, tonight we're going to talk about the September MUFON sighting statistics, which come out a couple of days ago. They're really on top of it tonight, or this, I should say, this year. It seems like they're out pretty quick with their sighting statistics. Katie Elizabeth, I'm not sure if she has audio on her Kelpie 2. I'd have to do some research. I thought her and I were friends on Facebook. I would have messaged her, but apparently we're not friends. I'm looking her up on Facebook, and geez, we're not friends. I don't know why. But I'll have to do some more research on her Kelpie 2. I'm sure she's got, after that story came out, I think it was just a few years ago, about the underwater noises. It's got to be noisy, especially in the summertime, with all the kids splashing and people fishing and the boats going. So I don't know how you'd disseminate anything. But if you're out there, I suppose, on a chilly fall afternoon, well, it was September, maybe you could hear some stuff underwater, but I think it would be kind of hard on a big lake where people are. It's a pleasure lake. I think it's unlimited speed, so you're gonna have jet skis and all that fun stuff, zipping around. Not something I would kayak in. Although now I'm thinking, maybe that would be a fun adventure next year. Let me put that on my list. Kayak Lake Champlain. Okay, not Champagne, Champlain. There we go. Okay, good. I'll put that on my list. Back to MUFON. The sighting statistics for September 2022. Kind of looking forward to this since last month, because in August, we saw 934 total sightings, with 744 sightings reported in the United States. And that doesn't sound that great, and it's not really that great, but it's pretty good compared to the last couple of years. And in fact, it's the highest totals we have seen since March and April of 2022. Actually, April was over 1,000 total sightings back in 2020. I say 2022, I meant 2020. So how did MUFON's numbers add up for the last month of the summer? Did we see an increase? Did we stay the same, or did it dip back to the low numbers we've been seeing the last this year and last year? It's really not been very, very good at all. Looking at these numbers, MUFON turned in 786 total sightings. So, yeah, kind of a dip. I don't know if I expected that big of a drop off, but yeah, it's that time of the year, I suppose. And the U.S. sightings dropped all the way down to 660, but still, even though it's a pretty big drop off, it's still the second highest total this year, obviously since last month, and so far, and the second highest totals in the last 2 years. Again, since that spike in reports back in March and April of 2020, with, let's see, 883 and 1,026 sightings, respectively. And we can take a look at the breakdown of these sightings as we like to do. The United States, again, had 660 sightings of the total 786. The United Kingdom and Canada were tied. I don't think I've ever seen this. 33 sightings apiece for both the United Kingdom and Canada. Usually, lately it's been the United Kingdom. Canada used to be second place all the time. And I think a lot of that has to do with the amount of investigators from MUFON in those areas, to be quite honest with you. France was in, well, third, I guess you could say, or fourth, however you want to look at it. France was next. How about that? With 19. Then we drop all the way down to 6 from Australia, 3 from New Zealand, 3 from China, and Netherlands, Spain, and Mexico had 2 reports each. And looks like we got like almost 20 other countries and territories with just 1 report each. Got lots of countries here, looking at Ireland, Jamaica, Argentina, Denmark, Austria, Greece, the Bahamas, Venezuela, Israel, Vietnam, Sweden, Cyprus, Brazil, all over the place, all over the world, with these individual sightings. And of course, United States, again, the most sightings, and that's of course, because MUFON is based here in the United States. So no surprise here. We've also got the most investigators for MUFON, so more boots on the ground, more people talking about it, more meetings. So, of course, more people using the website here in the United States to enter in their personal sightings. And all these statistics are based on sightings that were reported this month. So if something happened in July of 1984, but it was reported in September, it's going to be here on this list. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that because, when Hangar 1 came out, was it 2016? The sightings were way higher. They were like 1,200 sightings a month. I think it was a slow month. There was a ton of sightings. I should say reports, but these weren't all current sightings. These were historical reports. So we're not really sure unless you dig in. If you're a MUFON member, you can dig into these sightings. I'm no longer a MUFON member for my own personal reasons, but you can disseminate all the information. They were supposed to update their methodology of report taking, but that's been something they've been talking about for like 20 years now, and it hasn't improved all that much. But anyway, 660 sightings breaks down with California leading the way with 63 sightings, and they should because they have the most population of any state, so that would kind of fall into line with that. Missouri, which does not have the number 2 amount of population, is second with 50 sightings. That's something to look at. That's a very interesting number. Texas, 41. Florida with 36. Pennsylvania with 31. New York, 27. Washington State has 26. New Jersey, 23. Colorado and North Carolina both have 21 reports each. Michigan, 20. Kansas had 19. Ohio had 16. Arizona and Indiana had 15 reports each. Oklahoma, Massachusetts, and Kentucky all had 13 reports. Virginia, Wisconsin both had 12. Illinois, Minnesota both had 11. Then we had Arkansas and Utah with 10. Georgia, Idaho, Maryland, Oregon, Connecticut, and New Mexico all had 9. Then we had Tennessee with 8. Louisiana and Nevada with 6. Also New Hampshire and South Carolina and Alabama with 6. Then it drops off. You haven't heard your state. You had 4 or less. Hawaii had 4. That's kind of a record right there. That's pretty high for Hawaii. I'd have to do some research on that one. Alaska had 3. That's pretty big for Alaska and Hawaii to be 4 and 3 like that. Pretty interesting. Maine and Nebraska and Iowa, as well as Rhode Island, Mississippi, all had 3. Montana, all 500 of you, you had 2. That's pretty high as far as population percentage or per capita. North Dakota, Vermont, Delaware, West Virginia, South Dakota, y'all also had, y'all had 2. And Wyoming and the District of Columbia, which isn't a state. Sorry, guys. I know you're protesting for that. Wyoming and D.C. had 1 report. 1 report. It's pretty good, I would say. Yeah, they had, let's see. Let's see. Israel had 1. Israel. Yeah, that's about it from the Middle East. Where are we at here? There we are. So MUFON, yeah, it's dropping off again. And I've been saying this for months. I don't understand why they don't advertise or they don't do anything outside of their own aging circle. Well, let's just face it. It's an old bunch. People that were doing this since the 80s and maybe early 90s from the X-Files crowd, still hanging on to that old time. They're all wearing their flannel shirts from their Nirvana days, and you got to get some youth involved in this. I'm not saying do a rap video or anything like that, but come on, MUFON. You've got to get with the times. You got to get some new blood. You got to get some advertising going. Talk about this. This is right now is the prime. Well, you kind of missed it. Last year was the prime time to really get people involved with UFOs and UAPs. But I don't see them doing it. Yeah, I don't understand why they don't spend time and money and effort into advertising. It's a business, and they rely on the people who are paying money on a year-to-year basis. But when your membership is aging, that number is going to get smaller due to a number of factors. But you got to get new people involved, and there's probably a lot of younger investigators, but that's only part of the battle. You got to get people who are having these experiences, having these sightings. You got to get them involved. You got to let them know you exist. Well, Hangar 1 was a good start way back when, but there's more to it than just TV shows. You got to get out there. You got to cut some hay, as they say. Is that what they say? I mean, there's no bad ideas. Visiting schools, I think that's a great idea. High schools, libraries, and I know a lot of them do library presentations, but they seem so focused on their own meetings that it's all about us inside and not reaching out. And I know a lot of individual investigators, state directors do a lot of media things, which is very important. But I tell you, New Fork, which has like literally 3 people running that entire organization, I read a lot more of their information and a lot more of stories related to New Fork, the National UFO Reporting Center, than I do about MUFON. Like, where's the PR team here? Really, cut some hay. And speaking of cutting hay, that's my segue to talk about some other news this week in the form of crop circles. Yes, I went that far. Crop circles, we haven't really talked about it too much, but it's a pretty popular topic. It's kind of unknown. It's usually related to UFOs, but not necessarily always related to UFOs. It's really, truly, when you look at the world of the paranormal, it's one of the newest sensations and was rarely talked about until the 1980s. Let's face it. Stories of UFO nests or landing sites were mentioned in the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, with small circles, very small circles, about the size of what they felt the ship was, just a regular circle. And these things were happening on a pretty rare basis. But in the 1980s, really the late 1970s and early 1980s, the crop circle phenomena exploded like popcorn. It was then that the newly formed pursuit of information about these circles, these experts in investigating and researching crop circles, known as croppies, but also known as cerealogists. Yes, that's a real thing. I'm a cerealogist because I like cereal. No, not really. Cerealogists are people who study crop circles. That pursuit was born, and that term was created in the 1980s by crop circle researcher Colin Andrews. I got his book somewhere up there. Circular Evidence. Get your hands on that. That's one of the first books on cerealogy about crop circles by Colin Andrews. Throughout the 1980s, crop circle sightings created the cerealogist following, and it became a huge sensation. It was all over TV. There were specials about this. There were magazines popping up about this. All the paranormal magazines were talking about crop circles and crappies. They were famous. They were sexy before ghost investigators. These were poster people. You'd rip their bifold out of these crop circle or these paranormal magazines and stick them on your wall and wish that one day you could be as cool as these guys. Well before the ghost hunters or ghost people were famous in the mid to late 1990s. We all became rock stars after they did. And of course, as the 1980s wore on, crop circle sightings got bigger and bigger. That all kind of came crashing down in the early 1990s. In 1991, two men, Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, produced a crop circle using ropes and wooden planks in front of journalists. The journalists then had crop circle experts, these cerealogists, including Pat Delgado, examine the circle. And then Pat Delgado and some other researchers claimed that this was a genuine circle created by unknown forces, possibly, yes, dem aliens. Shortly after this incident pretty much being exposed, Delgado and many others quit the field and moved on. One would think this would have been the end of the crop circle phenomena, even though many doubted that the two alone had created dozens of circles over a dozen years. However, the astonishing admission actually inspired a lot of other people to create crop circles that have since helped develop new methods of creating more elaborate crop circles in the same amount of time. And if you look back at the 80s, the early crop circles, they were really, really basic compared to stuff that's being made nowadays. Of course, we have GPS now. We've got drones helping out. All sorts of new technology that is assisting in the creation of crop circle making, because it's not them aliens, it's them people with boards and planks or whatever else they're using now, probably skateboards and nylon rope. I don't know. The article that I'm looking at here mentions it's on Boing, that it's creating a lot of problems for farmers all over the world. And despite ongoing claims of alien involvement, it's quite well known that humans are behind, let's face it, nearly every single crop circle created. And again, it's creating a lot of problems for farmers all around the world. According to a recent article on Boing, flattening the grain doesn't always damage the crop. Sometimes it's just bent over, but it makes it very difficult for the mechanical combines to harvest it. The article also mentions that more than half of the crop circles created the United Kingdom since 2018 have been found in southwest England in the county of Wiltshire, which is home to Stonehenge. And according to The Guardian, farmers have lost more than 30,000 British pounds in income between 2018 and 2022 due to 92 different crop circles of various sizes. And that's only about $34,000. May not sound like a large amount of money, but try losing that out of your bank account. That's a lot of money. And the Guardian states that this equates to the loss of wheat and barley, the equivalent of 300,000 lost loaves of bread. And flattened rapeseed could have produced 600 liters of canola oil. And using my toe math, my calculations come out to about 422 48 fluid ounces containers of canola oil. Well, actually, I used to Google for that. So it's these people make them, and of course they get popular locally, and then the farmers aren't advertising for this stuff. And we're in a global food crisis. Let's face it, grain prices have gotten much higher, especially since Russia invaded Ukraine. Then, of course, you have people that are coming to the site to see these, and they're ruining the crop at that point when they're walking on it. And of course, the farmers have to spend more money trying to get the grain to be harvestable. Is that a word? Well, it is now. But a lot of people still think crop circles are created by dumb aliens who are trying to send us a message of peace and how to live better. But if they're destroying our food supply, maybe we should just not listen to their message at all. So strong winds, that's been a hypothesis. And downdrafts. You have, trying to think, there's another term for that in thunderstorms. A microburst, I think, is the term, where wind will blow straight downward and could flatten crop or bend it over like that, but it's not going to form those intricate patterns. But it is possible that strong wind can create small areas of depression in crops and also trees, for that matter. We've seen it with knocking over trees, blowing up houses, barns and things. So yeah, microbursts are a real thing that could happen. But in the United Kingdom, this is just all done for fun. It's all done for fun. Kids, people don't have much to do. Advertising, it's funny. It's becoming a cottage industry now of creating crop circles through advertising for money, and they're paying farmers to flatten their crops for advertising. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the damage done. It's not funny anymore. Let it go. But that's all I've got for you for this week. It's time for some beauty rest. Going to jump on over and listen to the Mallard Report with Jim Mallard at Mallard.com. And I'll see you next week. But for now, keep your eyes in the skies, your ears in the woods, the hair standing on the back of your neck, and always keep your mind slightly ajar. And above all else, don't stop believing. For the Paranormal News Insider, this is Dr. Brian D. Parsons reporting.